What's up, world? It's your boy. I haven't made a YouTube video in a while, and there's a lot of different reasons for that, none of which I'm sure you care about. But today I wanted to make another video because I fell in love with video games again, and I was in a dark spot for a while because of a lot of stinkers and clunkers that came out. But one video game company has made me gain all my faith and all my love back in the art of making video games. And yeah, I'm sure you guessed it by now. That company is EA Games because I love Anthem. Please don't click away, I was just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not wealthy enough to be good at EA Games. No, the gaming company that I want to talk about today is Nintendo. Yes, Nintendo. Nintendo is my favorite right now, and I have a really good reason why. It's pretty simple, actually. It's called Breath of the Wild. So, for context, growing up, I had a Sega, I had a Nintendo 64, I had a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, I had a GameCube, I had all the systems. And then once I got to maybe a teenager age, it became more about graphics and action to me, and that's right when the Wii started picking up when I was entering high school, and I never really got into the Wii, so I missed basically everything Nintendo's done from the GameCube until now, when I actually just recently bought a Switch. And no, my girlfriend's boyfriend didn't buy me it. So I absolutely love my Switch. I bought The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I bought the Pokemon Go game when I bought the Switch. And let me tell you, Breath of the Wild is one of the greatest games I've ever played for a bunch of reasons. Now, I'm not here to tell you it's perfect. I'm not here to tell you that it has no flaws. I'm not here to tell you that there aren't shortcomings with the game, because Nintendo took a whole different direction with Breath of the Wild than all the previous Zelda games. But it is absolutely fantastic in my little humble opinion. When I first started playing the game, it was overwhelming, honestly. I mean, for the first few hours in the game, I really had no idea what was going on, what to expect. I mean, obviously I was on the Great Plateau and I was running around trying to find the shrines and talking to Old Man. There was so much going on in such a gigantic world that it was almost like overwhelming is the perfect way to describe it. But this experience of this game made me fall back in love with video games. So in my opinion, over the last 5 to 10 years, video games have kind of taken a little hit. Now, I'm not going to say that there haven't been amazing video games that we've got to play. There have been. There's been a ton. But the way that the industry and developers and publishers handle themselves, and now we see that sickening disease of microtransactions coming into every format of video games, not just the mobile games. Now it's in everything, in story progression games. It's really disheartening when you're a true video game lover and you love the art form of video games to see the way that greed has really sunk its teeth into the industry. But once I got going with Zelda, man, none of that mattered because this game took me back to when I was 13, 14 years old, playing Majora's Mask and the Ocarina of Time, and just absolutely feeling bewildered and like I was a part of something huge, and there was just mystery and adventure and things to find and new ways to play and things that I had never even imagined all unfolding in front of me. Breath of the Wild is one of these games that it's not necessarily hard or difficult, and as you go on it gets a little easier with better gear and things like that. But it's unique in that, or maybe I shouldn't say unique because video games used to do this, but it's unique nowadays where it doesn't really hold your hand as much. Where a lot of video games nowadays, you get a quest, you look at your map, it tells you exactly where to go, you follow the quest marker, you go to that area, you do what you gotta do, that's it. You're not even really doing anything, you're kind of just following along with what the developers wrote into the game. But in Breath of the Wild, it's a little different. You get a quest, you'll get a picture, you'll get something, and you'll get hints, and you'll get little bits of pieces of information that'll tell you where you got to go or what you have to do, or like a little riddle or something like that. And you really have to think about it and think about what the next step is and where you should be going and what you should be doing. And it was just a new level of challenge that I haven't felt in so long playing video games. These days, you put in a video game, yeah, they're fun. You enjoy the gameplay, you enjoy the story. You're seeing new things. The technology is always advancing, but to me, you don't feel challenged as much. And I'm not one of these guys who plays Dark Souls and things like that. I'm not going to act like I'm an extremely hardcore gamer that's played every single tough game out there, but as more of like your average gamer who likes to play pretty regularly, at least every day. This game challenged me in a way that I haven't really been challenged in a while, and I really liked that and appreciated that about the formula that they put into the game. I grew up playing Ocarina of Time, okay? So in Ocarina of Time, the great thing that you get is you get the Master Sword, and once you get the Master Sword, it's the sword that seals the darkness, and you feel like a badass, and you can take down Ganon and all that. In Breath of the Wild, you start the game out, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm not obviously not going to get the Master Sword to start, but you start playing, and as you travel along the Great Plateau, you start seeing enemies, and you're like, well, how am I supposed to fight? What do I have to fight with? And you look over, and there's a tree branch on the ground, and you go, okay, I'll pick up that branch over there. I mean, at least I can swing it at something. So you pick that up, and you go fight some bokoblins and things like that. Maybe a Lisfalos if you're unlucky on the Great Plateau. I'm not sure if they're on the Great Plateau, but either way, you really have to learn to fend for yourself, and it thrusts you into this survival type game that's really fresh for Zelda and challenging and fun for beginner players. Now, I went into this game not knowing anything. I didn't watch any YouTube videos about it. I didn't know any of the story. I just knew that it was a Zelda game that I hadn't played that everybody said was amazing, and I bought the Switch primarily to play it. So in Breath of the Wild, part of the story is you lost your memories, and you have to go to certain locations to trigger memories that you used to have, and then you can piece back together what happened that leads you up to this point, and you can figure out everything that's going on and why Hyrule is the way that it is. And so you look at these pictures, and you have to figure out where they're at in the world just based on a picture. And you can get small hints from people at different various places. So really early on in the game, I hadn't really figured out much. I hadn't done any divine beasts. I was just still kind of making my way in the game and learning how to play exactly and seeing new things. And I got a hint as to where this picture could be taken from a guy. So to try and recover a memory. And me, I'm new to the game. I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find this memory. And what became of that was one of my favorite gaming memories recently that has happened to me. So you have to look on your map, and you use the hints of what this guy told you. You pull up your map, you scan over the map, you find a location that he said, and he says, oh, it's east of here, but south of this thing, and you kind of have to guess where on the map you got to go, and you put a marker, and you got to set off on your journey. And it took me a while, and I had to go through a lot of places that I was way too weak to go, and I got killed by a few Lionels. But eventually, after all this traversing and all this of trying to navigate the world and learn new things, I eventually made it, and I got that memory, and I felt so accomplished for doing this. It was amazing, and it was a feeling that I hadn't really felt in a while playing a video game. So another instance, I have to go to this cold place, okay? I have to go to the top of the mountain to find something. And I go into that area, and I start taking damage because my temperature meter tells me that it's too cold and I'm losing hearts. So I run out of that area quickly because I don't want to die, and I have to figure out, okay, how can I exist in that cold temperature? I don't have any gear that gives me, cold resistance or anything like that, and I don't know of anything else, so I'm kind of scavenging around and I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I know that there's a cooking system, I know that I have ingredients and things like that. Maybe there's something I can do with that, but I don't know how to cook. I don't know. Nobody's taught me how to do anything. Nobody's taught me how to use any of these ingredients or even start a fire. So, need to make a long story short, I had to figure out all this stuff on my own. I had to figure out that you need to put wood down next to flint, and then you strike it with something and it starts a fire. And that's awesome, because that's logical. That's real life. That's what you do. You have your tinder and your flint and you strike it with something and you get a fire. And then I was able to cook, and then I managed to Gordon Ramsay up some berries or a meal that made me cold resistant, and I was able to go do my quest. I just really think that that's so cool, the way that Nintendo developed this game, especially in the atmosphere where it seems like everything is being geared towards really casual gamers or cash grabs, where they want to try and make as much money and gut the game as much as possible, Anthem, or they want people to just be able to easily walk through it and not be challenged at all. Another thing that I really like about Breath of the Wild is how it wove real world logic into the game, and it became a part of the challenges of the world and figuring out how to do things or how to get places or accomplish certain tasks, where it's just like everything within the world kind of makes sense. Like the weather effects make sense, the wind, the way that you set fire to grass, the way that just everything, the way that your weapons break. I just really appreciate the different approach to the video game that Nintendo brought to the table with Breath of the Wild. It really made me feel refreshed when I'm playing it, and I'm about 130 hours into it. I just bought the DLCs like last week and I'm working through them, and I'm just thoroughly pleased with my experience. And it may not be the most beautiful game, it may not be the most technically advanced game, it may not have the greatest storyline ever, it may not have the best boss fights ever, but just the whole package, the whole experience, just took open world games and Zelda and mashed them together and flipped it on its head and just created a beautiful piece of art, in my opinion. I mean, I can literally just pick that game up and just run around for hours, just doing really nothing but finding things, seeing things, uncovering things, collecting things, just freely just kind of running around and looking at the world and not really needing something to do. And that's pretty incredible to me, where you can create a world and players just want to exist in it, just experience it. There's nothing more else that they need. I mean, shit, I'm enjoying myself. Why leave? So I'm not going to go into a full review of the game. The game's been out for years. Everybody knows it's good. If you really want to play it, you've probably played it by now. If you've been holding out, just get it. Just get yourself a Switch. I really felt compelled just to talk about my experience with it because it had such a big impact on me. And I'm almost 30 years old, okay? I've been playing video games basically as long as I can remember. And this is one of those games that I'll really cherish and remember. And I'm lucky enough to have had two amazing games kind of back to back with one turd squeezed in the middle. But to take it back to one of my beginning points, video games aren't necessarily in a terrible state. It's just the way that the whole sort of business is kind of going with things, where it's becoming a lot more soulless. It's really nice to see these few companies or these few developers really putting the time and effort into their fans and into their video games, and you can just see the passion. It's just pouring out of these pixels, the passion that these developers have put into it. And I really just wanted to put my thoughts out there and let people know how amazing these works of art are. Maybe one day I'll do a in detail review of Breath of the Wild, something like that, where I can get more down to the nitty gritty of some more specific things that I really enjoyed about the game and thought that it did really well, because there's a lot of them. But for now, I mean, it's not the most ideal situation of what I'm recording on, and I don't have that much editing power, so you just got to work with what you got. And right now, this is what I got. So um, it's just an incredible game, and I really, really hope that Nintendo builds off this foundation. I know a lot of people out there are hoping that they flip some of the assets from this game and make kind of like a sequel to it or something like that, kind of along the lines of how they did Majora's Mask with a lot of the assets from Ocarina of Time. I mean, they created so much stuff for this game and such an amazing just I don't know if they made a whole different engine for this game. I'm assuming so, but they need to reuse it because the freedom that this game gives you is unmatched by basically every other open world game that I've played. I mean, I'm sure you could make arguments for other games, but this one is definitely one of the top ones, if not the top one out there. So it really just reinvigorated my love for video games, and it really brought me back to a place that I haven't experienced playing video games in over a decade. And I just needed to take that love that I got from the video game, bundle it up, pull it up out of my throat, and spit it back out to the world because I really love this game. Thank you, Nintendo. Thank you, everybody who had a hand in it. And I really, really hope you're going to announce the sequel to it sometime soon. Please. Thanks, guys. See you again soon.